Hi everyone, this is Miss Michaela, and in this video I will be going over what we did in Lit B on December 2nd and 3rd. Okay, so first we just had the normal announcements, after school support from 2 to 4. We have office hours, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock. Poetry Out Loud is coming up, so if you have not picked your poem yet, or if you haven't started memorizing, try and get on that because the advisory competitions are next week. And then I also talked about missing assignments. And each class for Lit B does have a few missing assignments, so try and go to after school support or office hours if you need help completing any of those. I also have the late policy here just so you know that we are taking points off if you are turning in work late. So if an assignment is turned in 3 days late, 10% of the grade is deducted, which means if it was a 10-point assignment, the most points you could get is a 9 out of 10. If it is over a week late, 30% of the grade is deducted, which means the highest you could get on a 10-point assignment is a 7 out of 10. And then if it's over 3 weeks late, 50% of the grade is deducted, which means the highest you could get is a 5 out of 10 on a 10-point assignment. And that is still better than a 0, so please, if it is late, try and turn that in. Okay, so if we go to classwork here, the first thing that we did this week was, if you scroll down to poetry, Abecedarius poem. And if we look at what this is, we're going to be learning about different types of poetry for the next little bit. And so this is the first type of poem that we are learning about. So for this poem, as you can see, we have the alphabet here, A all the way down to Z. And in each line here, you want to write a word that begins with this letter. So for A, you would write one word. Let's just say about. And then B, you would write one word for B. About becoming, and then you would write one word for C, one word for D, all the way down here to Z. And try and make it make sense. You can make more than one sentence. So about becoming Chef Dan. Maybe, I don't know. And you could just keep going all the way. Since there aren't a lot of words that begin with X, you could use a word that starts with EX. So you could have like the word example here. And it doesn't start with the letter X, but it starts with the same sound. So that one you could do that for. So basically all you're doing here is you're just trying to make sense. You're putting in a word for each letter of the alphabet and trying to make a poem out of it. It is very, very difficult, so we understand if it isn't perfect, but just do your best. The second kind of poetry that we learned about was haikus this week. So a haiku is a one stanza poem, so it's very, very short. And there are 3 lines in a haiku. The first line always has 5 syllables, the second line has 7, and the third line has 5 syllables. Haikus also talk about like a specific moment in time that maybe the poet wanted to look at and thought was really interesting. It usually will show how a poet was feeling about something at that time. Haikus also have no rhyme in them. They usually use imagery to describe something. I have these emojis here because imagery uses sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch to describe something. A lot of the times haiku are about nature or human psychology. So really, there's 3 rules to haikus. First, they do not rhyme. Second, they're always about nature or human psychology. And then third, you have to have 5 syllables in the first line, 7 syllables in the second line, and 5 syllables in the third line. The haiku originated in Japan in the 16th century. And then in the 17th century, this guy, Matsuo Basho, became the most well-known poet for haiku. And I've got this picture of him here. he was known as a master of haiku. So the type of poem haiku started in the 16th century, but then it became really, really popular in the 17th century because of Basho. And he wrote all of these poems about nature and the natural world, and everybody loved them, so they became very, very popular. This one is his most popular haiku. It's called The Old Pond. And one thing that I want to point out is that when you write a poem in Japanese, the syllables are different than they are in English. So I looked at quite a few different translations before I picked this one because I wanted it to be the right number of syllables, where there's 5 in this line, 7 in this line, and 5 in this line. So I'll let you listen to this here. It's the Japanese reading of his poem, The Old Pond. Maybe. Let's see. There we go.
古池や河津飛び込む水の音
So that was the Japanese language for the old pond, and in English it goes like this. The silent old pond, a mirror of ancient calm, a frog leaps in, splash. So this poem is about nature, and it's about him staring at this old pond, and it has no ripples in it. It's very calm until this frog leaps in, like in the video. And all of these ripples happen, and it kind of disrupts the calm. Okay, another poem by Basho, Winter Solitude. Winter solitude, in a world of one color, the sound of wind. So this poem is about in the winter, and solitude, here, let me look up the definition of solitude for you. The state or situation of being alone. It's like seclusion and a lack of contact with people. And I think that in this poem, solitude is a positive thing of being away from people and just being in nature in a world of one color, white, because everything is white in the winter because of the snow. And then he talks about the sound of the wind and how that's like the one thing he can hear. And I have this split up into syllables here. Winter solitude. And this slash separates the different syllables so you can see how many syllables are in this poem. Okay, and then the last haiku I have here is not by Basho. It is a much more recent one from this year, and it's a social distancing haiku. Global pandemic, humanity is still, yet spring brings a new day. So this poem is a little bit about human psychology because it's talking about humanity and how hard it is to be socially distanced from each other. But then it ends on a positive note, and it talks about spring and nature and how at some point things will move forward and things start growing in the spring and good things happen. So we talked about how people like to read haikus because they're very short, only 3 lines, and you can get so much information about nature and human psychology in such a short little snippet of a poem. And then I compared it to like a snapshot of taking a picture. This was a picture that I took in River Falls. I was walking one day and I saw this and I thought it was so pretty that I just had to take a picture of it. Haikus are just like the same exact thing, except for instead of taking a picture, you write a poem about the thing that you are looking at. So then in class, we wrote a poem together. And period 3 and period 7, you both wrote about sunsets. And this is period 7's poem. The sun coming through the clouds, the water reflects, the sun changes color. So this is our haiku. And then for homework, I assigned a writing a haiku assignment. And here it is in Google Sheets. So I have the rules for the poem again here. It doesn't rhyme. It's usually about nature, human psychology. It has 3 lines and then 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables. So there's 5 boxes here and then 7 here and 5. So you won't be putting one word in each box, you're going to do one syllable. So for Lit B's poem, The Sun Coming Through, we would do this, the sun coming through. So I split up the word coming into the 2 syllables. Their next line, the clouds, the water reflects. So you would have the clouds, the water reflects. And that's how you're splitting it up. So for homework, you are writing a haiku for next time.